It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Agronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. Tonight, I'm going to butcher that because reasons. I'm going to do that over.
No, leave it in. Leave it in.
You can't stop now.
Okay.
You can stop now.
If you wish to restart, we understand.
Nah, it's okay.
You should restart.
Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 216. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Wait, 216?
Yeah, I think so.
That's what the board thing says.
Okay.
And Grace.
You guys all have extremely wrong opinions about flying in WoW.
Kodra.
I just want the audience to know that this time, Bell breaking down wasn't our fault.
It's true. Tam.
We've completed the hat trick. Belle has been made to laugh by everyone in the show now.
Okay. Thalen.
Hi.
Thank you, Thalen, for taking this normally.
We're professionals.
Yeah, so I'm apparently out of it today. But, we're going to leave that train wreck in for reasons, because it's funny. So, we're all here, which is crazy, because it's been several episodes, it seems, since we've had all 6 of us.
It's madness.
Last week, Kodra was at GenCon.
I was at GenCon.
Kodra, tell us about GenCon.
GenCon was really fun. I haven't been in 2 years. I actually, once I didn't realize this because I had a child and I was like, I probably shouldn't go to a convention. Last year was its 50th anniversary, so that was apparently a big deal.
Oh,
but,
man.
Yeah, 50 years of GenCon. So this was year 51 of GenCon, and it was a lot of fun. I mostly signed up for a bunch of LARPs with groups that I had done, and then a couple of LARPs with groups I hadn't LARPed with before, and got to play a whole bunch of characters, and got a very, very brief glimpse into the vendor hall, which once again reminds me that I could have probably spent an entire convention at the vendor hall.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people do.
I'm pretty sure that's what I do at conventions.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people do. I was only in there for 2.5 hours on Sunday, and I managed to buy 3 different games. It was me just I felt cursed wandering through these halls, being foisted new awesome games upon me. It was an opportunity to see how certain companies present themselves when given physical space, which was quite amusing, especially for Kingdom Death.
Kingdom Death, a weird experience.
Are they in fact as edgelordy as it seems?
It's not so much they're edgelordy; they're incredibly ostentatious.
Adam Poots is like the most artiste of artistes.
And in fact, their booth was set up like a gallery. There were all of these display cases showing all of these models that had been crafted for you, and then there was a velvet roped line that you had to wait in to be able to enter the Kingdom Death area.
Wow.
It was an incredibly weird experience, seeing that from the outside. I didn't want to stand in line because our playgroup decided they didn't need any more Kingdom Death. There was a life-size statue of creepy Kingdom Death character, which was pretty cool. And then on the other side of this was level 99 frantically trying to talk to all of the people who were coming up to them and figuring out, helping me figure out what Ash did or did not already have in his collection based on what I knew. It was quite funny because they're like, oh, based on what you're describing, this person sounds like they're a Kickstarter backer, and they probably have all of this stuff.
As far as Exceed goes, that is true. I think there were Kickstarter promos for the first Kickstarter that I don't have, but I also don't think they sell those.
Yeah, I also managed to pick up a copy of Trash Pandas, which looks like it'll be a lot of fun, by the same people that did Sushi Go. I'm
into that.
It's it looks like it'll be a little bit lighter than Go Nuts for Donuts, which seemed like it would ultimately lead to some hurt feelings. I played a lot of Terraforming Mars. This was probably the most I haven't been in 2 years. This was the most queer visible convention I had ever been to. Like, more people, and I think this might have been somewhat attributed to there being like rainbow D&D t-shirts and rainbow GenCon t-shirts, and so there was just a lot of people wearing like branded Pride outfits, but it felt a lot more open and like queer positive than any of the Gen Cons I've been to in the past.
That's pretty cool.
It was.
That might explain why that guy got punched.
Yeah, that guy got punched. That guy got punched because he's not really welcome in nerd circles as much anymore.
He's kind of a horrible human being.
Yeah, I heard about that one secondhand. There was one of the cool LARPs I did was called Starbright, loosely based off of the television series Gravity Falls and Steven Universe, which is why I decided, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like something I'd like to do. One of the mechanics they had was that it was supposed to be a LARP that promotes self-care. And so your characters all had abilities that they could spend resources on. And the ways you would recover resources is by, like, going off and doing something that calms you down or, like, refills your social energy. So, like, for me, I was like, oh, I'm feeling hungry. And so I, like, stepped out of the LARP and went and grabbed myself a sandwich. And so that earned me resources back.
That's entertaining.
That's an incredibly good idea.
Yeah!
Yeah.
It was a really cool idea, and the structure of the LARP was really fun. Like, there were all of these little mini quests that got stuck on stars around the room, and you would, like, find these with other players, and you would have to collaborate to solve whatever they asked you to do. For example, I found one that was fix a song, which seemed a little abstract, but we managed to, like, rewrite the words to Rockabye Baby to not end with a baby falling to its death from a tree. And so that counted as fixing a song. It was fun. It's Gen Con is like, and I don't know if this is Gen Con or if this is LARPing or what, but it's the one time of the year where it's like, I feel like there's this just constant crescendo of, like, love and affirmation that actually recharges me at the end of it. And granted, it definitely ended with, like, well, so Saturday night when you guys were recording podcast, I was out. We all of the, like, various LARP groups get together in one of the rooms and just everyone brings some drinks, and we ended up staying out till like 4 a.m. having a party. And then we got up and we went to a friend's, one of the LARP friends I had made there's birthday party that he holds every single year. It's an incredibly cool community, and it's just a little bit weird that it only meets once a year.
I would assume that's entirely logistics there.
Yeah, like, there aren't many cons that really support there aren't many cons geared towards LARPing, or the types of LARPs that I do, which I should specify. When I say LARP, I'm talking about sort of what you would imagine a LARP one-shot to be. These aren't like the vampire campaigns or the Amped Guard campaigns. These are more social theater LARPs.
Yeah.
I'm given a character, and then I am acting out that character. And in this particular convention, I died a whole lot in character. I played characters that probably were designed to die very quickly. I played a couple 40k LARPs, and I put it out to the Slack channel to see what character I should play. And so I ended up playing a orc and a chrono gladiator. Both of those died very quickly. But I also ended up, one of the cooler LARPs was It was Call of Cthulhu. It was the 80s. I was the big brother who was hosting my little sister's sleepover party. And our family was still sort of grieving the loss of our mother, and I had discovered some weird occult rituals going through my mom's stuff. And so I was determined to get everyone together and do a spooky game where we followed out the ritual.
I'm sure that went well.
It didn't end up well. I don't know. Everyone but me seemed to be okay. Well, no, that's not true. Everyone else, like, I believe at the end they all sort of lived miserable, empty lives based on the pact that they signed.
Hooray!
Yeah.
So, one of the general things that I find is interesting is your Gen Con experience is probably vastly different than a lot of the people that I see going to Gen Con. And, like, one of my takeaways from going to PAX South multiple times and doing slightly different things each time is that, like, when you say you're at a convention, like, that is a vastly different meaning for every person that's attending. Like, there was one year that I went to a lot of panels. There was another year that, like, I was mostly in press conferences. There was another year that, like, I think I mostly just played video games. But then I know there were people that, like, would sit around and mostly watch esports. And, like, Gen Con for you is very much, this is where I go to LARP. And it's interesting that, like, it's a structure that people are going to, and they have similar experiences, but no two people probably have exactly the same experience going to the thing.
Oh, very unlikely. And in fact, I would say Gen Con is more that way than most conventions, just because of its event structure. Like, when I go to Gen Con, I sign up for events. And then I go to those events, and there are thousands of events, and so that allows for a lot more diversity. And what it allows for that I don't get from a PAX is it allows for a smaller, more intimate like experience where I would never say that I've met people at PAX that I didn't already know, whereas I have met tons of people at Gen Con just because PAX isn't really good at partitioning people off into their own separate play groups.
I have a similar... it's interesting, because my experience with things like this are like with minis, like miniatures conventions, and I'd gone to a few of them. And my experience is that, and I don't know if Gen Con is this way, but my experience is that if you are not already in a group, at least at like a non-zero number of groups, you may as well not attend, because there's just nothing for you.
So the counter to that is also true, that if you're in a group of too many people, it can also kind of be a miserable experience. Because that year when we had like 16 people at PAX South was nonsense.
Yeah. Because like, yeah, I definitely agree that like PAX it's not partitioned in such a way that you would meet new people, except like very much in passing and not actually like hang out with anybody new. And the closest analog that I have to what you describe at Gen Con is like Nova or Adepticon or similar. But like if I were to just go to one of those without like, this is the thing I'm going for, it would just be like, well, there's nobody here who I can talk to or wants to talk to me, and there's really no events to actually do anything at. I can go to the dealer's room.
Yeah, I will say that tabletop, like role-playing games definitely have more of a social interaction component baked in, which helps, I think.
Yeah.
I think things like, whatever the living campaign replacement, I can never remember the name of it, Adventures League? Like stuff like that tends to help with like giving you a way to jump into games.
Yeah, well,
for things that have that sort of campaign.
At South last year, I just jumped into a card game tournament for a card game I had never played before.
I mean, I find all of this really fascinating because I don't think I've ever actually been to a gaming-centric con. Like, I've been to, media-based cons, fandom-based cons, Comic-Con kind of thing, but never, like, one that was really specifically geared first towards games of one kind or another. So my experience is just completely different.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think of like A-Con and Otakon and DragonCon.
I ended up meeting several people, but I met them through Twitter in the run-up to a PAX, not necessarily like organically through the con.
So this year, I definitely had some cool Providence where I was in a LARP with one person who was familiar with LARPing and one person who was completely new to it. And the person who was new to it was the princess, and I was the princess's best friend.
I assume you were able to help the person not familiar with LARPing to get familiar with LARPing. So tonight is apparently the night where stuff happens that doesn't normally happen. At some point during that explanation, we appear to have lost a Kodra.
Oh boy. Whoops.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's not an answer that we're gonna get. Yep, there he goes offline. Okay, sweet. So, we're gonna move forward.
Hopefully he'll be back along in a bit.
Yeah.
We shall see.
Grace, tell us
Yeah.
about Steambirds Alliance.
So I signed up for the Spryfox Games like email newsletter. I don't know, at some point after playing a bunch of Alpha Bear probably. And I kept getting these occasional mails about a game that they have in development called Steambirds Alliance. That sounded kind of intriguing. And I guess a couple weeks ago, I got an invitation to their beta and got to check it out. And Steambirds Alliance just on paper sounds like the weirdest possible thing. So it is an MMO bullet hell shooter where you play a steampunk bird flying around in a steampunk aircraft shooting down cats who are in their own steampunk aircraft.
Until you said you're a steampunk bird, it sounded like Realm of the Mad God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, how does it play compared to Realm of the Mad God?
So I never actually played Realm of the Mad God, so I couldn't actually tell you that. But what I have played of it so far has been incredibly fun. And the thing that was appealing to me about it when I started playing and looking into it a little bit is reading about sort of some of their development mindset going into it, which in part was like, how can we make a game that is as co-op as we can possibly make it, and how can we get rid of as many possible ways of trolling that we can, and ways for people to annoy each other or grief each other. So it's like that's an ethos that I can support.
Yes, very
Yeah,
much
I'm here
so.
for it.
And and it's got some things about it that normally I would call questionable, and the fact that it's in a beta means that I'm willing to give it a try. So it does have permadeath, which is usually a thing that will definitely put a giant red mark against a game for me. But
And now it sounds like Survived By.
I mean, it still sounds like Realm of the Mad God.
I mean,
True.
it's pretty forgiving. I mean, I haven't exactly made a ton of progress in it, but I've died to stupid things multiple times, and it's pretty quick to pop back up to about where I was. So I don't really have any of the complaints that I normally would about that. And it's just been like stupidly fun flying around in my little ship and like blasting cats. And there's some nice mechanics, I think, that make it easy to play with other people and not be griefed. Like, there's no friendly fire, which is important in a game where there's already tons of explosions and bullets and lasers everywhere. And the other cool thing that I like is you sort of, in the open world, you have a little display that shows you where other players are around you, and you can just instantly teleport to them. and you get a couple seconds of buffer when you do that, so you don't accidentally teleport into instant death. So I had a bunch of fun, a few nights just bouncing around, finding people who were fighting weird big ships and pew-pewing away at them and dying horribly and starting over again.
Is it like an open worldy kind of thing, or is it like level based, or?
Yeah, it's pretty open worldy. And so that, I was kind of wondering how that was going to work, but it's pretty open, and you can bounce around by teleporting to strangers, but you can also just fly around. And in my wandering, I haven't hit the edge of anything yet, although I didn't expressly try to do that thing. But yeah, I started playing this and thought hey, I think maybe Ash might like a game like this.
I am definitely intrigued.
It's worth keeping an eye on. I don't know that there's a specific way of getting your hands on a beta key right now. I know that they were giving away some on their stream. I don't know if they still are, but it's on Steam. You can put it on your wish list, or keep an eye on it there. And it doesn't have a set release date yet, but it is definitely worth keeping in the back of your mind, because from what I've played of it, it was really fun, and I'm kind of looking forward to at some point the chance of trying to specifically play it with a friend instead of just wandering around with random strangers, because I think it could be a really good time.
I like friends.
And I hadn't realized, I guess Spryfox co-developed Realm of the Mad God, so they have some experience in this whole sort of thing.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that I was reading about it was, they were trying to take some of what they learned from that and just add steampunk birds and try to do what they could to make it as happily co-op as they could.
I mean, Realm of the Mad Gods is one of the most unapologetically co-op games. I don't think... Can you PvP in that game?
I have no idea.
Not that I'm aware of.
And, it's also a game with permadeath, where, part of the way you progress is through leveling up characters and then having them die glorious deaths.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's, pretty familiar to this. Basically, when your little plane blows up, you lose your plane and the stuff, but your pilot might level up, and then, you can keep transferring some of that on board. I'm pretty bad at, the whole bullet hell thing, so I didn't always have long, illustrious careers with my little pilots, but...
I mean, you did play a lot of that game out of Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah, but that was really more I don't know. That was
pinball?
Pinball, pachinko kind of thing, yeah. But
I don't know, I felt like it had bullet hell elements.
Maybe slightly. I mean, I played a ton of Undertale. I played I like bullet hell games. I enjoy them. I'm just not necessarily a pro at them. And so that's kind of why I've been having fun with this, because if I want to go and get myself neck deep into an area with stuff that's higher level than me, and things are flying around everywhere, I can, and then probably die. But I can also take my time and kind of gradually level myself up, killing things that are a match for me, and finding a little area of the world where the stuff is a level and an amount of bullet hell complexity that is compatible with my high reflexes, and level away.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and for a game that doesn't have a release date yet, it felt, pretty well actualized. I mean, I'm sure that there are things missing that they intend to put in. I'm sure that there's, a lot of polish still to be done, but it felt relatively complete to play. I didn't feel like I was playing something that was, completely broken or half finished.
So speaking of things that a lot of people think are not completely finished, I've been playing a little Monster Hunter World on the PC.
I love your segues, Belle.
So this game has been getting a lot of grief since it launched on a Thursday. That was a thing. All in all, though, like I'm not super disappointed with it. I think a lot of the issues that are happening right now are due to the fact that it is trying to plug into Steam. Because instead of clans, you seem to have your Steam groups as available clans.
Oh, so it's just as bad at letting you play with your friends, but in different ways.
Yeah, in different ways. Like I think a lot of my problem is the fact that I've not been judicious with like controlling the number of groups and friends I have on Steam, because it seems to take forever to matchmake.
I mean, there's also the fact that it is, the 4th or 5th most popular game on Steam right now?
Yeah, well, that's part of it too.
And maybe
Wolfie,
Steam is having issues handling that.
Wolfie and I did manage to play some together today. So, like, I have one person that I actually know with a guild card swapped, and we figured out how to chat with each other. So that was another battle. But the in-game chat system works so much better, with keyboard than trying to send messages. Yeah. All in all, like, I am playing for the most part with the stock layout, minus one swap that I did, which was to shift control and right mouse button, like the abilities that were on there. So, God, the thing, you would have to know what the longsword attacks are to understand what they're taking the place of. But essentially, the default setup for longsword, for example, was the thrust attack that I very rarely use on right mouse button, and the spirit blade attack that I use all the time on control, which did not work at all. So I swapped those, and after doing that, life has been largely grand. I did forget how big of a jump up in difficulty Anjanath is the first time you fight them. So, like, that's the only thing I've failed at so far. And technically, I failed 2 times, and then Wolfie came in and joined and failed 1 time. So we womped out of that one. It's pretty.
Anjanath is pretty scary that first time you run into him.
It's real pretty. Like, there was a lot of question about how well it would run. And I have, like, I've been super lazy and I haven't built my new machine, or more so moved everything over to my new case. So I'm not actually running on my 1080 Ti right now. However, on my 980, I'm able to run everything pretty much full guns 1080p. I could potentially bump up the resolution a little bit more. It looks way nicer than the PlayStation did. There's a lot of times that I've stopped and just looked at the background because it was super blurry on the PlayStation 4, and it is gorgeous, like jaw-droppingly so, on the PC. So the world feels way more immersive than it did on the console. And maybe that was an experience that, like, the folks on the Pro or the Xbox One X had at 4K, but...
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it looks amazing on my PS4, but I have the upgraded one.
You've got the Pro, yeah. So, so, like, that's not an experience you have on the stock PS4. Like, a lot of the textures are blurry, and it's constantly doing the adaptive thing where it's shifting resolutions, or not resolutions, but detail of objects. And on the PC, you can just lock everything in and tell it, don't do that nonsense. And it looks beautiful. I'm not really sure if I like playing it with a controller or with a keyboard better yet. Like, it's different. I feel like dodging out of combat feels more challenging on a keyboard with WASD. And I don't really know how to explain that. The radial menu is... There's a keyboard mode for the radial menu, which allows you to hit F1 through F4 and then numeric keys to use the abilities. So I'm not sure. I feel like I need to change the key bindings for that, because reaching up to F1 to use a potion doesn't seem any faster than holding Q and using my 2 mouse buttons to scroll through the items. All in all, though, like I think it's a good port. It seems perfectly functional. It feels like Monster Hunter. It is... I can do all the things that I was used to doing on the PlayStation 4. I just forgot how challenging some of these monsters were the first time you encountered them.
That's legit. They're surprising.
Like, so I thought maybe I would do much better having the knowledge that I've gained, but honestly, the big thing that it's done is I have enough gear to not have to care about certain things that I absolutely still have to care about starting out fresh.
Yes.
Like gear does make a difference. Like, it's not just knowledge. Whether or not you can take a hit, definitely makes a difference. And I cannot take a hit. Although, it is funny going into this game with the way that I played the PlayStation 4 version. Like, I don't give a shit about having a set of gear that matches. Like, I am now mixing and matching the traits that I want the most, which is, I think, the mode in which Tam played, but I was trying to wear full sets of gear for a long time.
No.
Yeah, that was very much what I was doing.
Yeah,
no, same here. Like,
I was trying
maybe
to
have
wear
2
full
pieces
sets
at the same. Like, I don't know that I ever actually activated a set bonus.
I leave sets. I still complete sets.
I have definitely completed 1 set bonus.
That's just because the Xeno armor is stupid good.
Yes.
I've completed...
Right now, I'm running around at a couple pieces of bone and a couple miscellaneous pieces that each give me 1 poison resist. Because poison is horrible still. I miss my ability to be poison immune. Basically, like, I've heard a lot of horror stories about this game. One of the things that I encountered is it straight up will not work if DX3 is running.
Aww.
Just will not. It crashes out every single time, and I'm guessing that's probably a de novo thing.
I also have that with ESO, so maybe.
See, I can run ESO with DX3 without issues.
I can run ESO with DX3 if I start ESO first.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I've not had any issue one way or the other there. But this one, absolutely, like, I was shutting things off trying to see if it was one of those things that was interacting badly with it, and sure enough, anytime I fire up DX3, it would immediately drop back out. So, like, if you read the Steam forums, there's a lot of weird problems people are having. And they seem to be all over the place. I was lucky enough to somehow manage to, once I figured out the DX3 thing, it just works, and it runs well. I do not think this would run well on a lower-end machine, though. It supposedly requires a 4th gen Haswell processor or higher. So, I mean, that is setting a bar. I've heard it does not do well with the APUs at all.
I mean, my personal opinion on the APUs is that they are successfully marketing integrated graphics cards.
Yes, basically. I mean, they probably legitimately are slightly better than
the old integrated graphics cards, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, like the Intel integrated graphics, but not by much.
It's useful to know, though, if the game isn't happy on Saturn machine, because trying to figure out if buying the game again on the PC is worthwhile for being able to play with my spouse. Sounds like
I
might
don't
not be.
know. I wish they would do the route of Final Fantasy XIV and release some sort of a benchmark, so
Yeah,
that you can
that'd be
see
nice.
how
rare, though.
I know, but that's so good though. Like, I love
true.
that they do that thing. Here, we're gonna show you some scenes, and your computer's gonna try and render it, and now we're gonna say how well it's doing. You could probably run like PS4 quality on a much lower machine, but I don't know. Like, I wish there was a way to like let somebody test it out in theory, because I just honestly don't know how well it would work. So another topic that has been rolling down the hill for a few weeks is questing in 4X games. And Kodra, I think this was your topic.
It was.
And hopefully you are back and legitimately here.
I am back. I am legitimately here. Sorry about that earlier. I don't know what happened.
No problem.
Yeah, so I find 4X games I love 4X games, but they have some pacing problems. Especially where, like, once you have played a 4X game once, the shape of the early game and the mid game, like, there are various, like, ways a game is going to play out. And there are going to be good tense moments in there, but there's also going to be a lot that's just repetitive, and you've seen this play out before and before and before.
Yeah.
See why I play like the first hour and a half of every Stellaris game on the fastest speed.
Yes.
And what I am discovering is that one of the other things that I find frustrating is that 4X games give you this big amorphous goal and tell you to go do it, but then it's up to you to set the rest of the pace. Like, you're gonna have to be self-guided the entire journey from point A to point B. And both of these things are helped immensely by the addition of quests in 4X games. Like, Civilization 6 has this thing where every single tech in the tech tree has some condition that if you meet it, you basically get the tech costs half the amount of science it normally would. And these can be anything. These don't have to be science related. Like, one of them early on is go kill a barbarian, go discover a new continent, build certain buildings, build certain numbers of units. And what this does is it gives me micro objectives to achieve that aren't just go expand, like generically go get bigger.
So, in a similar vein, one of the games that I bounced off instantly when I first played it, and then came back to it, and it's become one of my favorites, is Warhammer Total War, which does the exact same thing. If you're playing in campaign mode, it gives you, like, build these buildings, build these units, take this territory, and, like, the quests become more and more complicated as your influence and your abilities grow, until you start having, like, quest chains that are like, build this building and then research this technology and then accomplish this kind of diplomatic situation with this other faction, leading up to do this, set piece battle to acquire a special item. And I like it for the exact same reasons. It gives you what do I do? I know where I am, and I know where the game is telling me to be, but the path in between point A and point B, while I realize it's supposed to be something that I explore, is so open-ended that you're like, I guess I'll just do things.
Man. Okay, so this is unsurprising, but this thing that you're mentioning just sounds miserable to me. like I've had 4X games that have tried to say, now build a granary, and I'm like, shut up. Let me do what the hell I want to do. I'm going to go explore over here because I don't know what's over here.
It's important. These are not tutorials. These are, if you do this thing, you'll get a bonus. Maybe you don't care about that bonus. I frequently will be like, I frequently turn down quests in Warhammer Total War because I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And along the same lines, there's plenty of times that, like a lot of the stuff in Civ 6, like, it's either the goal isn't something that I can reasonably do right now, and I need to go ahead and get that tech, so whatever, or I just don't want to spend the time dealing with that.
Yeah, I mean, in Warhammer, in Total Warhammer, it'll be like, hey, such and such noble wants you to reclaim their family's lands in this territory that is owned by a faction that you're not at war with, and I'm like, nope, not gonna be doing that. I'll take the influence or whatever hit. Like, no, I don't care. Or just tell you, like, outright, no, I'm not gonna bother. But kind of like that part too, because it's actually taking and doing the quests is a choice on my part.
Endless Legend is sort of a less optional variation in that each faction has its own unique main quest, which provides a variety of benefits for completing steps of it, but also encourages you to do the things that that faction is good at. In addition, you also have minor quests from the various neutral factions on the map, so that they'll basically stop attacking you. Or you could just break their cities and then they'll stop attacking you. I found that implementation to be really interesting, and I like it a lot, but Endless Legend is just too overwhelming in general for me to play that game a lot.
I really should try that game some more.
I should too, especially, like, it had a lot of interesting things going on and reminds me of a very old game that I vaguely remember from, like, a big box game from the 90s that I don't remember anymore the name of. But yeah, that's definitely one more of those games that's like, I should look at this closer.
That's basically what caused it. When Dan was talking about going back and looking at Total Warhammer, I went back and re-looked at Endless Legend, and there's cool stuff there.
But yeah, I feel like now that I've had a taste, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to go to a 4X game that doesn't at least provide me with some direction.
Not really the same, because I still like Stellaris a lot more than most other games in the genre.
I would say Stellaris has quests in it too, though.
I mean, he's got the random events and such, and they keep adding more.
That's true. Those usually aren't that helpful towards your, actually progressing through the game. But also in Stellaris, victory condition is sort of arbitrary anyway.
Yeah, but they give you something to do.
Yes.
They give you some direction to go towards. Which is actually why I think Stellaris isn't completely interminable. Because if I didn't have direction to go towards, if I was actually just trying to, quote-unquote, win Stellaris, I think that would be awful.
Yeah, it would be misery.
I mean, I have yet to actually finish a game of Stellaris, so...
I actually finally did that in a tiny galaxy recently.
I did finish a Stellaris game in a normal-sized galaxy, and I have found it extremely difficult to, start playing that game again. Even though there's, all kinds of interesting things, and the game is fundamentally completely different from the last time I played it, I think I went too far on that one. But yeah, I definitely even in exploration-focused games, I definitely like something to make the wandering feel meaningful.
Completely unrelated. Have you patched up No Man's Sky yet?
No. Because
they completely redid that game.
Yeah, but I didn't buy it the first time.
I know, but Tam, I believe, did.
It's apparently actually good now.
It's supposed to be pretty good. I've patched it up, but I haven't actually tried it.
I have also patched it up, but not tried it, simply because I have other things that I'm playing at the moment. I kind of feel like I don't need another reason to avoid playing other games. But, supposedly it's got actual NPCs. And originally, if you landed on a space station, there would be a single room in the space station with a single person that you could maybe talk to. And now there's apparently bustling hubs in these space stations with commerce sections of the space station and ship traders, and they also released a web map that you can see where you are in relation to other people if you want to start heading towards one of your friends that's across the galaxy.
I don't feel like I enjoyed the core loop of No Man's Sky enough to be enthusiastic about returning.
I feel like Starlink is the No Man's Sky I wanted to play.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a little bit too little too late for No Man's Sky, considering that I'm looking at Starlink and okay, but can I fly an R-Wing?
What is Starlink again?
It is Ubisoft's space exploration game that does not involve you leaving your spaceship ever. But it's also their take on the whole Toys to Life thing. But the Switch version lets you fly on R-Wing.
Ah.
I don't understand any reason to get that game on any platform other than the Switch.
Some people don't own Switches.
Maybe you should fix that?
Some people can't own Switches.
I mean, you might not.
There does seem to be a game
R-Wings
there, other than just the R-Wing thing.
I mean, maybe if the PlayStation version had some other special ship, I just don't know what that would be. Like, I'm drawing a blank on what PlayStation ship I would want. Because, like, the only thing I could really think of right now in my head is Einhander. And, like, we already got that in Final Fantasy XIV.
Maybe a Ratchet and Clank something or other.
I could see a Ratchet and Clank thing, yeah.
Or
that
the
would
ship,
be plenty to make me happy.
or the ship from Ikaruga.
That'd be kind of hard to get, probably.
Probably. Ratchet and Clank would be a lot easier, and I think cooler.
So what would the pilot be if you had the ship from Ikaruga?
Oh.
Was there a pilot?
Didn't you say you don't ever leave the ship? So does it matter?
They do have pilot stats and pilot figures. So apparently it matters.
Okay, now, just thinking about it, it would be amazing to have Ratchet and Clank as a thing. Because, like, you could have lots of characters and lots of ships from Ratchet and Clank. I mean, like a Captain Quark ship.
Ratchet and Clank would make for some really, really cool in-concept stuff for that game. Like, I don't love Ratchet and Clank enough for it to be like, I don't want to buy the Switch version now, but...
Especially if you could, like, outfit your ship with all the interesting weapons from the Ratchet and Clank franchise. Shit, now this makes me want to play some more Ratchet and Clank on PS4.
It's always
Good,
a
it's
good
pretty
life
good.
choice.
Ratchet and Clank is really great.
So I'm not exactly sure how deep down the rabbit hole this is going to go, but Starfinder thoughts?
I guess at this point, I play a little Starfinder, and I think Kodra's played a little Starfinder. And from the company that it just made We Don't Like Fourths, we made a new version of 3.5. This is actually kind of an interesting system.
Is it actually its own system, or is it just D&D 3.5 but for space?
It's still very D&D 3.5 adjacent. I mean, but like, so is D&D 5, right?
I mean, D&D 5 is D&D adjacent, being D&D. So
It's
yeah,
it's not the departure that 4 was.
well, no.
We'll talk about that in a bit.
So D&D Starfinder is its own. It's still a D20 system. It's interesting in that you've got 2 health pools, and one is designed for you to be able to recover it very easily, and the other is designed for you personally not to be able to recover it very easily. Although there is still Cure Light Wounds, which is a much better spell in this world because it's really the only way you get hit points back.
So is this like the wounds fatigue system that 20 Star Wars used?
Yes.
Okay.
Similar. You have stamina, which is lost first, and you have HP, which you have probably less of and is lost afterward. Well, probably not less of.
So my experience with it was playing a Solarian, which is kind of like a Jedi. I mean, it's doing a weird... It's also kind of like playing Ikaruga the class. You've got your light side and your dark side, and you're using the stellar forces of photons and gravitons to affect the world.
So you're like alternating between the two?
You can be. I wasn't. I was
Or you
playing...
can just go all in on one or the other.
I was all in on Photon.
Okay, I was picturing something like that one Warhammer Online orc class, the shaman of Mork and Gork or whatever.
In this case, you need to know a balanced set of abilities, but in any particular combat, you don't need to use a balanced set of abilities.
Okay.
I was playing in... So, I don't necessarily think Paizo is very good at writing game systems, although I think Starfinder is pretty great. I love Paizo because they are some of the best in the biz at writing adventures. And I got to play in their free RPG or Game Day RPG, Game Day. I don't remember what the thing is called, but they had a module for that where basically all of the local game stores have RPG players come in and play RPGs. And this year's was the Skitter Shot. And in the lore of the Starfinder world, there's a warfaring race known as the Vesk, and they want to conquer all of the planets. And so they came to what will eventually be known as Vesk 3, and landed on it to conquer it. And the only intelligent species there were the Skittermanders, the most helpful little creatures you can imagine. They are tiny furries. They are small-sized, furry, 6-armed creatures that just want to help everyone. And so when the Vesk landed on their planets and were moving all of these big armies around, they figured they'd help them by getting out of their way. So they ran away. And then the Vesk, wanting to, like, subjugate the planet, was like, oh no, we need to, like, do something about this. But their honor, because they're bound by a code of honor, couldn't actually fight a retreating army. So eventually they just sent an envoy to let the Skittermanders know that they had been conquered, to which the Skittermanders were like, okay, that seems to check out. We will help you conquer us. Which has left the Vesk in an odd position where everyone agrees that they have conquered the planet, but they don't feel like they did it the right way, and they feel like the Skittermanders are just laughing at them. I find this lore very funny, but the game was basically, we all played as Skittermanders trying to help this poor beleaguered Vesk scavenge a derelict space cruiser, and it was a lot of fun. It's some of the most humorous like content I've seen made by like a living campaign group.
I have now done 2 campaigns from their campaign team. One of them was very good, and one of them was just sort of okay. The one intended for beginners, which is called The Commencement, explains how you sort of get into the whole Starfinder Society thing, and why this group of level 1 adventurers has to go and do random stuff in the galaxy. And the answer is because almost all of the old Starfinders went off to do what they refer to as the Scoured Stars incident. Went off to an area to find a thing, and most of them didn't come back. But anyway, this quest involves meeting the leaders of the various factions of the Starfinder Society and doing errands for them, like buying a pop album because one of them has a crush on one of the other ones. It's a little silly.
I mean, I like a certain amount of silly in serious campaigns, and Starfinder seems like it lends itself to being a little silly really
Absolutely.
well.
I'm a fan of the setting and most of the writing they've done for it so far.
That's cool. I have mixed feelings about Pathfinder and, as a result, Starfinder, because it's a
system that got started from sour grapes.
Well, it's a system that got started from sour grapes about a system that I never really liked that much to begin with. Like, I feel like there's enough time and distance now from D&D 3.5 that I can say, like, it was cool and I liked it at the time because there was nothing else doing the things it was doing, and it gave birth to all sorts of interesting spin-offs because of the OGL and so on.
Yeah, that was the big thing.
And that was really, really cool, and I really appreciate the kind of stuff that it enabled, but I don't really like that core system.
I kind of feel about it the way that I felt about the Palladium games. I liked Rift and, the various other Palladium games, not so much because I liked the system. I liked that there were a bajillion source books and they all worked with each other. So I could mix and match any combination of things and make an adventure out of it. And that was kind of the thing I dug about 3.5, was that there's so much material out there that you could kind of cherry pick the things that you liked from this book and the things that you liked from that book, and it would all play together.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get into it now. I think the best system for cherry picking stuff from books and just being able to play it was 4E. Because, 4E was designed to be sort of drag and drop. It was supposed to make everything super simple for the GMs, like, you didn't have to worry about figuring out how to, they did a lot of work to, here's how you just throw these monsters together and they're a reasonable encounter.
Let me talk about how 4E was not at all easy to DM.
Well,
even a little bit.
The problem is if you wanted to have, NPC encounters, that was awful.
Well, even just combat encounters. Sure, it would say it was very good at 4E was really, really good at giving you, hey, you should put these monsters together for an encounter. And that's where its help ended.
What do you mean by that?
All of these monsters have interesting, complex interactions with one another and a lot of complicated abilities. And unless you have an encyclopedic knowledge of both what your players are capable of doing, and especially in concert with one another, and what your monsters are capable of doing, especially in concert with one another, as well as what expectations your players might have for what monster combos you're not using, 4E rapidly results in either super combo monster encounters that crush your party if they're not super experienced, or stuff that's technically of the right CR, but if you don't know how to pilot it, will just get rolled by your players if they do know what they're doing.
I see.
Yeah. 4E has lots of like abilities that combo with each other, and if you don't know about them and take advantage of that and everything, you need to be taking advantage of it in every single fight, and you need to know more than your players about the possible combinations, or you need to know the system so well that you can make stuff up that your players aren't going to know. Otherwise your group of players is rapidly going to outpace your ability to keep up with combat, because you have to actually be smarter than your 5 players, which is almost impossible as a DM. Yeah. Well, the nice thing about Third Ed, because like Tam mentioned with the OGL, was there was all this so much third-party stuff that you could cherry pick out of to use in your game. And yeah, you had to worry about, okay, is this stuff going to remain balanced if you keep together? But that was going to happen if you didn't pull stuff in third party. Savage Species, I'm looking at you. But like, if there was a thing that you wanted to do in your game, you could find, a third party book that matched up reasonably well with it to give you a start on what you were doing instead of having to, come up with whatever it was from scratch.
Oh, hey, do you want to play
that
some
was really nice.
Do you want to play some like weird Magitech Mage Punk stuff? Here's 30 books to choose from.
Yup.
Pick your favorites. Some of them are even official.
Yeah, and so many settings that you could pick and choose from. Like Monty Cook had his setting. There was the Calamar setting. All the official settings, of course.
Green Ronin had a setting too, and I don't remember what it was called.
That's starting to happen for 5 because they went back to the OGL thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that part, 100% agreed, is the coolest part of 3.5, and did an incredibly good job.
Yeah, and I don't think we're ever going to recapture the breadth of stuff in 5th edition, simply because honestly, a lot of the companies that sprung up out of nowhere to make stuff for the OGL died pretty rapidly.
Yeah,
they make their own game now.
Yeah. So and the ones that did survive from back then, they're making their own game now. So, but just that ability for like, I think instead of companies like publishing, hardcover books and actual physical things, it's going to be a lot more digital stuff available on Drive-Thru RPG and so forth. And that's pretty cool. I like having options.
The other thing Paizo is doing now, however, is they decided to move on to the 2nd edition of Pathfinder.
So not D&D 3 3/4?
And believe it or not, it's not that thing. And the internet is so mad that it is not that thing.
I can imagine.
Pathfinder 2.0 is obviously heavily based on Pathfinder in terms of things like the classes it includes, settings, so on and so forth. Systems-wise, it's still a D20 system, and then they decided to rip a whole lot of the rest of it out. Still have the same races, still have the same classes mostly. They added goblins to the core book. They added alchemists to the core book. They did not add witch to the core book.
Which is probably fine.
Or oracle. Or summoner. Man, that book had a lot of broken classes in it.
It sure did. Alchemist was probably the only one that wasn't really broken. I guess Gunslinger wasn't that bad.
But they decided that the way class progression works, it should look a little more like 4E. And yeah, reaction to this has been not great. Point buy is basically dead. You have a different way to build your character now. Your stats go up significantly more than they would in 3.5 or Pathfinder, and it's a lot closer to Starfinder. And that you can raise 4 different stats when you get a stat increase. The end result is a system that is not still 3.5 and still pretty different from Starfinder, but also still different from like 5E, which is what I expected them to get closer to. It's, for lack of a better way to phrase this, it is still crunchier than 5E.
I mean, that's what I would expect.
While I'm not surprised, it does
remove the things I strongly disliked about 3.5, and Pathfinder mostly did not previously remove those, like the skill set. But like this seems to have a place because they're not as tethered to the old stuff anymore, and they can continue writing adventures for Pathfinder without having to try to balance D&D 3.5. Yes.
I would also argue that Pathfinder bloated up enough that it became a nightmare to balance.
Sometimes I wonder. This is why Adventurers League in 5th edition has the core book plus one rule. You can use what's in the player's handbook and one additional book.
I think this is a really clever rule.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
So I understand why, but I also definitely understand why they did it.
Same, but it does mean that the way they publish things means that there's a lot of things that you just can't, like, as of right now, it makes sense to have your core extra book be Xanathars because that's the only book with other player stuff in it.
Right.
You want to be a different race? Well, that's your book. Is that anything for you? No? I'm sorry.
So this is actually where I think how Paizo does it is very clever. Starting off, I believe you get the core rule book. As you do adventuring, you unlock additional things that are not from the core rule book. And so you can unlock new perks and new abilities that you can give to your characters.
I mean, that sounds sort of cool, except that, I mean, realistically, like, the point where you start getting in trouble is when you're building up some levels anyway, so it doesn't seem like it's actually controlling things as much as it does at first glance.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like the biggest problem with the core book plus one approach is that they really, really need to be hyper cognizant about ensuring that the plus one books have enough content to support class builds.
And they don't, mostly.
And yeah, that's a serious problem. But if it were like, but this is one of those things where the old the complete druid or the complete wizard would be where it's like, oh hey, we published a book that's got a bunch of like wizard specific stuff and a bunch of relevant stuff that had been previously printed that you can use. So it's like, oh hey, here's a collection of unique monsters from Xanathars plus like the good druid stuff. So it's like, okay, now you can actually play a shape-shifting druid because the things that you need are all in one place.
Yeah. I mean, D&D 2nd edition used to do that stuff where there would be a class player's guide that kind of included most of everything that you'd want to play with.
Yeah,
3.5 did the big thing with
and so forth.
Complete Divine, Complete Arcane, whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
And the Book of Nine Swords.
Yes.
I mean, I will say Palladium was the world's worst about letting powers creep like that, because there were so many times that there were optional things that came from guides that were just infinitely better than the thing that you could do with the base game. Like, for example, you got to pick a, martial fighting style. And out of any of the base games, there were like two to pick. There was the expensive one and there was the cheap one. And they were both really bland and boring. Or if you had the Ninjas and Super Spies book, you could substitute any of the fighting styles from that were just infinitely better because it was designed to be played by itself.
Yeah, like why wouldn't you take a Ninjas and Super Spies fighting style if you could?
But like that system was just laced with all of those things where here's a game based around this one thing. So like you wanted to take a mutation, well then you're gonna go break out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that has every possible nuanced mutation you could ever have.
The main problem with the 5th edition approach right now is that races should probably be exempt from this rule. Because so far they haven't printed any races that are broken, because races in 5th edition are pretty minor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the really good ones are in the core book anyway. Dwarves, half-elves.
Yeah. And I think that's one of those, like, the concept, as I was saying, I totally agree with the concept. I think the execution is probably still lacking.
I completely understand the reason, because they are terrified of 3.5 and how that system got completely out of control. And that's fine. They don't want 5e to get completely out of control, especially in organized play.
Right. But it does mean that, like, fan favorite classes or classes that are more complex sort of just become unplayable, even if they wouldn't be out of band.
They're going to print an Artificer in the new Eberron book. That means you can't be say, Tabaxi Artificer. I mean, you can, but not in organized play.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's interesting to see where Pathfinder 2 is going. I don't have any great love for 3.5. It does contain a class that they're never going to print in anything ever again that I really like.
Which one?
Dragonfire Adept is basically a class that fights with breath weapons.
Yeah, that's not coming back.
No, it's never coming back. It wasn't even particularly out of band as far as 3.5 goes, but it's never coming back. Sort of like how the Warlord is never coming back.
Aww.
I think 3rd edition especially will always hold a special place in my heart because the sort of support it got was just unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fact that there would be huge, like, kiosks full of all the new books, and the fact that they made the strategic decision to make those first 3 books only $19.95 a piece. Like, it got a lot of people in that probably never would have given it a second look just because it was so visible. Like, you could not go to a bookstore that was not hawking lots and lots of material. And that was really the first time that had ever happened. Like, Like game books were always that thing that was, like, crammed way back in the back corner of the store where nobody could see you.
I think Mox has had a recent discovery because they moved. While they still have that corner that has all the game books in it, they moved a bunch of D&D stuff to their popular shelf.
Well, somebody was on Colbert talking about D&D for like 10 minutes a few nights ago, so...
Oh, wasn't that the dude? I can't remember his name. He played like a werewolf on True Blood.
Joe Manganiello?
Was that who it was?
That's who it was. I don't know who that is because I don't know actors very well.
I mean, I don't ever remember actors' names, but like...
Yes, he was the werewolf on Dread.
If you happen to be attracted to men, you would probably not forget that dude.
Okay.
I like.
But yeah, like between stuff like that, like
I think that's my favorite turn of phrase today.
Like actual celebrities that normal people know, like talking about how much they enjoy playing D&D, combined with the rise of things like Critical Role and the like D&D is actually in the it's visible to the public, not just the gaming public, the actual overall public.
That reminds me, I need to check out Critical Role.
I mean, my parents were talking about that Colbert interview.
Yeah.
Like, that's how, in the general public realm, that is.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Mox had a whole lot of, like, normal people, like, coming in all of a sudden asking about this D&D thing.
I mean, I totally support that things like Critical Role and the C-Team exist. It's just not for me. Like, I've tried to watch it, and... it's that whole problem that I have whenever I try and watch, like, esports or something like that.
You'd rather just be playing.
I'd rather just be playing than watching someone else play.
Yeah, that's me too.
It reminds me of when I was back in high school, and, like, the person I was dating was like, come and watch us play D&D, and then maybe you'll want to play with us. And going and watching someone else play D&D is, like, not actually that interesting. Like, I respect that a lot of people are super into these things, but yeah, I'd rather just be playing.
Like, it is wildly popular amongst my Twitter feed. Like, there's lots of Critical Role related tweet matter.
I mean, I watched part of the, like, special thing they did with Terry Crews for the, like, Battle for Azeroth World of Warcraft flavored D&D game. It was pretty entertaining, but it still suffers from the, like, just watching other people play D&D isn't actually that exciting to me. So, yeah, sorry, literally all of my Twitter friends.
I mean, I think the concept of Critical Role is really cool. It's like all these people that do the voices of the characters that you like from games, playing characters in a D&D game. So, like, that's cool. It's just, yeah.
No, I'm all for it. Like, you know, to introduce people to D&D, give them a way and into it. They watch these people play and like, hey, maybe I'd be interested in playing. Great. I don't have any real interest in watching.
I I love that it exists, and I love that people love it, but I don't want to play it.
Yeah, but that's okay. Not everything has to be for me. It's amazing.
I mean, I've loved how well Overwatch League has done. I think that's cool. Also, totally not for me.
That's, I think, my favorite thing about where games have gone in the last, decade or so, is it's big enough that things can be just not for me.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, there was definitely a time where, I played a lot of games that normally would never appeal to me just because I had literally played everything else that the grocery store had to rent. So I might as well try it. It's the only reason why I've played, the Genghis Khan role-playing game or Romance of Three Kingdoms, is because the grocery store had it, and I'd played literally everything else.
But every so often, one of those is just awesome.
It's true.
And it's not going to be most of them, because they're not for you. I play all kinds of things that I have all kinds of things that I've tried that are just that I've gone into it being this is not a game for me, but I'm going to try it. Or this is not a book for me, but I'm going to try it. And most of the time, probably 80% of the time, yeah, that's correct. It's not for me. But oh man, that one time out of 5 or so, or 10, where it's oh wow, this is super awesome, is great.
Perfect example is Night in the Woods. At face value, maybe didn't seem like a game I'd be that into, but it was probably my favorite game that we've played this year. I mean, that I've played this year, period. Not a Wii necessarily, but just of the games that I've played this year, it is probably my favorite. Anyway, we should probably wrap this up, given that, I don't know if we've run long or if we're running right on time, because, yeah, this has been a weird show.
I think we're running right on time.
We can pretend that's true.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
It's
okay.
Almost the end of the Final Fantasy V Forge Out Fiesta, so you have 2 weeks left.
Is anyone other than Ash actually playing it?
Most people other than me are finished.
Okay. I did not play this year. I'm bad. Also, I guess, Warcraft expansion next week.
I donated this year, but did not actually play and got a very confused email.
Yeah, I've done that before. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week, hopefully for a show where I don't botch the intro.
Wait, you're keeping that?
I am absolutely keeping that.
I mean, what are we going to do at this point? We can't go back and change it.
I guess we live here now.
This is
we
where we
do
live
live
now.
here. This is why we can't have nice
This
things.
is when the other podcasts ask us if what kind of editing and pre-planning we do, and they don't believe us when we say we don't.
No, I think they believe us now.
Probably.
Yeah, no, they straight up believe us, yeah.
We worked extra hard to prove it.
I don't know why any of you listen to this, but thank you. Anyway, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
night.
See ya.